Good morning, everybody, and welcome to my weekly report of all of the craziness going on in Washington. I think we're going to see my understanding is President Trump is going to have his first full cabinet meeting with Elon Musk attending. It's kind of interesting. One day Elon Musk is virtually in control of the government with his Doge efforts. The next day they're denying he's even part of the government. Yeah, he'll be sitting in on the cabinet meeting today, and I'll come back to that in a little while. There's so many things hitting us at once. I do want to raise a couple of issues that are not directly related to the onslaught from Trump, Musk, and the chaos of this new administration. First is an issue that I literally hear about everywhere across Virginia, and that is the challenge around housing. We have enormous shortage of housing units in America. It's been estimated about 4.7 million units short. A lot of that came from the hangover from COVID when so much additional building was shut down. Increasingly, we're finding it extremely difficult, particularly for new couples, to buy that first house. Let me talk about two items that are on the supply side. We got plenty of demand. We need more supply. One, I've partnered with my friend Shelley Moore Capito from West Virginia on a piece of legislation called the Historic Rural Tax Credit Program, which would allow us in a lot of rural communities to convert old schools, pre-existing buildings, using historic tax credits into residences. The housing shortage is not just a urban or suburban phenomena. It is also the case in a lot of rural America. And trying to give that extra incentive using the historic tax credit is one tool for rural communities that I think is extremely important. We also have a piece of legislation that also is bipartisan as well that will allow for fill-in development. And many times we've got decaying housing, and again, rural, suburban, and urban. It may not pencil out to rehabilitate that housing on its own, but when you build in the fact that you've already got existing transportation infrastructure, when you've already got broadband, when you've already got water and sewer, this will incent some of that rebuilding of existing housing stock. And finally, an area that's going to require local, state, and federal incentives, and that is the ability, particularly for religious houses of worship, oftentimes who've got large land tracts, to go ahead and move forward on building out some multifamily housing. I was at a church in Northern Virginia recently where they've literally spent 5 years and still haven't moved a shovel of dirt, trying to take some of their excess property, and the church would donate the land. You could create multifamily housing. We've got to find a way to move this faster. There are a series of areas where we've got to cut bureaucracy and red tape, and moving housing through that process faster is something that I'm committed to. This is an area where I think I can find some common cause, even with my the banking and housing chair, Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina. And in the coming weeks, I'm going to be laying out a fulsome housing agenda. Second, and this is kind of like with so much dealing with our military families, I think about the constant need to keep pressure on military housing to make sure our service members are housed appropriately and don't have the kind of issues. And we've revisited this 2 or 3 times over the last decade, where sometimes some of the private military contractors are not doing a very good job. Another area that's rebubbled up right now is on TRANSCOM, the military command that helps our service members move from one location to another. They've got a contractor named Safe Housing Alliance, I believe it's called. And what we're continuing to hear is that just as in 2014, when this issue first percolated up, people are not getting moved on time. They're having to incur additional costs and fees. Our military families, it's hard enough to move every couple years. They don't need the extra burden of additional bureaucracy and additional costs coming from these duty stations that are being realigned. So I've gone back to the TRANSCOM leadership and said, we've got to hold this contractor accountable. We cannot leave these families in the lurch. We're hearing a lot of this from our service members in Hampton Roads, and we're going to stay on this until it gets resolved. Back to the kind of two more items before we go to questions. One is the efforts with DOGE. And listen, I'm all for government efficiency. And if the Elon Musk effort had come in and gone with any kind of strategy rather than wholesale cutting of the government workforce, I would be very supportive. I know there's a lot of areas, for example, in DoD contracting where we can bring greater efficiencies, where we can give program managers more control over a project, or where we can try to slow down litigation by having loser pays in federal contracting legislation. One area where Musk is right, but he's going about it the wrong way, is on improper payments to individuals who died. The truth is, years ago, I passed a bill that became law that had the Social Security, what's called the master death file. That file be shared with the Treasury do not pay file. That bill became law. It saved, I think, first few months about $30 million, but the bill was only law to try for 3 years. So again, with Republican Senators John Kennedy, I've introduced legislation to put that in place that can bring about efficiency rather than the kind of willy-nilly cutting of civil servants that now measure in the thousands. And particularly, I think, at the VA, I wanted to raise that. We heard just yesterday from a VA family, somebody laid off in Salem outside of Roanoke. This was a younger VA employee, I believe, that was on the probationary 2-year period. He was about to start a family. His life is in total chaos at this point. And this is going to affect our veterans. I mean, obviously, not only in terms of the VA personnel themselves being laid off, which will mean less services. And I think I'm going to see this tomorrow. I'm going to go to a ribbon cutting of a major new facility in Fredericksburg for veterans that we've been working on for close to 8 years. Shouldn't have taken this long. Huge problems with both the lease and then getting a consolidation of other clinics. Good news is it's finally going to get opened. The bad news is it's been reported that it's going to only have about half the number of VA employees that it was scheduled to have with these cutbacks. So what is more stupid than spending all the capital to make an improvement and then not putting the human resources in to make sure that it's being adequately staffed? So my hope is we've not raised expectations for the greater Fredericksburg area for veterans to come in and get a brand new facility and then not have adequate staffing. And I'd also quickly want to remind folks that as we lay off federal workers and fire federal workers literally with no cause, about 30% of our federal workforce are veterans. So once again, this is having a disproportionate impact on our Veterans Committee. And this comes from an administration that says it wants to support our veterans. So far, they've done absolutely the opposite. And then finally, sitting in my position on the Intelligence Committee, it was I thought, an embarrassing day for America earlier this week when, on the 3rd anniversary of Putin's brutal invasion of Ukraine, the United States, along with Russia, North Korea, Iran, Nicaragua, a host of Russian allies around the world, and it was literally about 12 or 13, the United States voted with this cabal of evil to say, Putin didn't really invade Ukraine. It was an embarrassment in front of the literally 70-plus other members of the UN that told the truth and said, no, we want to stand by Ukraine. This administration's willingness to walk away from long-term alliances and think about the situation in Ukraine only as another real estate deal or a quick transaction, I think will pay so enormous challenges for years to come. I know I was at the Munich Security Conference a few weeks back. I think I briefed on that. But long-term alliances, when you destroy those alliances, or when you side with Russia and the UN against democracies, you can't rebuild that overnight. And I believe that it is making America less safe. So we're, 40 some odd days into this new administration. I said I expected a flood. I didn't expect necessarily a tsunami. But we are fighting on a variety of fronts. Some of the illegal actions of the Trump administration, trying to stand up for our workforce, at the same time trying to make sure housing, transcom, these traditional issues get addressed. And this is even before we grapple with the bill that got through the House last night. A version got through the Senate where the overall budget plan of the Republicans is coming out, where they will cut government services, in particular Medicaid, and frankly to provide tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans. That's just not fair. It's just not right. And we'll stand in the breach, but we need our Republican local elected officials, state legislators, and others to stand up for Virginia and stand up for our country as well. With that, why don't I turn it over to Rachel, and be happy to take some of your questions.
Senator, good morning. Good morning. Places like Bristow, Virginia, went 39 points for Trump. When you talk to Virginians, is this what they voted for?
No, Tom, they didn't vote for this. They voted because they thought Donald Trump was going to slow inflation and bring down grocery prices. He's done absolutely nothing on those issues. Matter of fact, he spent more time trying to rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America than he's talked about the price of eggs. And I think people are starting to have buyer's remorse. I think there was a Roanoke college poll yesterday that had the president's approval rating at about 37% in Virginia. We're seeing, for example, community health centers in rural Virginia shutting down because the illegal freeze of federal funding, which the administration said they have removed, but the funds are still not flowing. Communities that supported the president broadly are being, in certain cases, the first ones hurt. We still can't get an answer, and I've partnered with Tim Kaine and the North Carolina Republican senators, Tom Tillis and Ted Budd, to see is the disaster relief money that was due to come into Virginia. We had about $3.7 billion. $660 million of that was to go to rebuild the Creeper Trail. We don't know if that money is coming or not. I think not for the first time, Donald Trump sold a bill of goods to people that he's not acting on. Instead, he is, without rhyme or reason, has empowered Elon Musk and these Doge boys to come in and indiscriminately fire people without any review of their quality of their work. And communities across Virginia are going to feel it. I think we are kind of like ground zero because we've got a lot of federal employees. We've got a lot of defense contractors. I think we're feeling it first. And evidence of that, Tom, is Tim Kaine and I had a town hall the other day, a teletown hall. We normally get 3,000 to 6,000 people. We had 71,000 people at one point on that call. 60,000 stayed on for the whole hour. So this is not what they voted for. What I'm hoping for, waiting for, is when, for Republican local elected officials, state legislators, hopefully then members of Congress will step up. I think about 3 major economic development projects that we've been working on for a couple of years, all in rural Virginia. One in Danville, one in Chester, one out in Pulaski. We don't know if those funds are coming now. So literally years of work and local government investments for these projects are up in the air, and we can't get any answers. So I think there'll be blowback. I think the honeymoon is basically over. And what's so frustrating is there are a lot of inefficiencies in government. I'm proud of the fact that when I was governor, Virginia was named best state for business and best managed state. If there was a real willingness to partner to bring about efficiencies, count me in. But to come in and empower 22-year-olds who have no idea what they're doing to simply slash government workers. And I see this particularly in the national security space, where at CISA, some of our best people are young cybersecurity experts. they're getting fired willy-nilly. They can go find jobs in the private sector. But by doing this, America is less safe. And I think people who voted for Mr. Trump are having second thoughts.
Folks, hopefully you're able to hear the senator. We've gotten those audio issues fixed. Our next question is going to be from Brendan Ponton with WTKR. Mitchell Miller with WTOP.
Hi, Senator. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I was going to ask you a question related to federal contractors. As you well know, there are a lot of them in Northern Virginia. Of course, understandably, a lot of attention has been focused on federal workers. But what is your office and what are you hearing from federal contractors about their concerns about what's been happening?
There are huge concerns amongst our contractor community. I met with many of the major defense contractors, or the smaller ones, and when I say smaller, it's relative, 1,000 to 5,000 employees, before the president was sworn in. And they are particularly concerned that their contracts may be just cut without warning. I know a number of the USAID contracts have already been cut. I'm seeing that within the cybersecurity domain, contracts being cut. The question will be, people need to stand up and speak out. I think there's a number of our contractors who believe if they simply keep quiet and keep their head low, they can kind of get through this. I don't think anyone is going to be spared, because if this was being evaluated on the merits of these contracts, count me in. But instead, you are empowering, I believe, illegally, these young DOJ employees, many of which don't even have appropriate security clearances, to go in and cut contracts and employees with no basis in fact. You're seeing I think what you're going to simply see is lots of government contractors litigate this. That will cost more money. We'll end up costing taxpayer dollars, not saving taxpayer dollars. You've already seen the complete, I'm not sure what is the right word. You're already seeing the DOJ effort put out statements saying of savings that are frankly wrong and embarrassingly inept, where they cite billions of dollars on a certain contract when it's $1 million, where they are citing things that have no basis in fact. If these are the whiz-bang tech brains and their reports so far have been a failing grade, it should send shivers up anyone who does business with the government, whether you're an employee or a contractor. And my fear is all we're going to end up seeing is years of litigation, no savings made, and frankly, a lot of folks, not only in the federal workforce, but in the contractor workforce, losing their jobs and hurting our economy in a dramatic way. And the DMV is kind of ground zero for those kind of cuts and that kind of response. Hello, this is Mark Warner. Welcome back.
All right, we are able to go ahead and get restarted. I want to thank everyone on the line for their patience, and we apologize for the inconvenience. Our next question, if you're still on the line, is going to be from Michael Pope. Avery Davis with WVIR.
Hello, Senator. I heard that you were speaking a little bit on this earlier, but it was echoey. But I just want to hear kind of your reaction to how Trump has been handling the war in Ukraine, and specifically if you believe that them relinquishing their hopes for NATO is the best path forward.
Listen, we want to see a ceasefire and peace in Ukraine. Mr. Trump claims he's master of the deal. Well, if you're going into a negotiation with someone as brutal as Vladimir Putin, what you don't do is give in to a lot of his demands before you start the negotiation. So the idea that the Trump officials are saying, of course, Ukraine's going to have to give up territory. Of course, Ukraine is not going to be able to join NATO. Ukraine needs some security guarantees. And it's been an embarrassment how he has undermined our longstanding alliance with our NATO allies and with Ukraine. Remember, Ukraine has lost 400,000 people killed by this brutal Russian invasion. And for Trump to simply undercut Ukraine is bad for American security. It means that our NATO allies are not going to trust us anymore. It's good that they need to step up and pay more. I'm all for that. But if they don't trust that we will stand by them, and so far it feels like Vladimir Putin has given up nothing, yet won from the Trump administration a whole series of concessions with him giving nothing. So far, Vladimir Putin has outdealt Donald Trump and made him look weak. And we look weak to the rest of the world when we join Russia, North Korea, Iran, Nicaragua, countries that are constantly opposed to us, in voting in the UN to say that Russia didn't invade Ukraine. That's ridiculous. And it was an embarrassment, particularly coming on the third anniversary of Putin's brutal invasion. So I would give, we want to get to a peace agreement. We want to see Ukraine's preserved, but I'm not sure we're headed on that path. And if we can, I know there's some presumption that there may be a meeting between Zelensky and Trump tomorrow on sharing some of Ukraine's mineral worth. We'll see if that actually comes to pass. But so far, again, I think I would give the Trump administration a failing grade in giving concession after concession to Putin without getting anything in return.
Our next question will be Sarah Allen from CBS 19. Sarah, are you on the line? Okay. Moving on, John Fredericks on. How about Gavin Stone from the Pilot?
Hi, Senator. This is Gavin Stone with the Virginia. I was wondering if you could speak to some of the local impacts from the federal spending cuts that DOGE and Elon Musk have implemented, and just what you've seen specifically for the Hampton Roads region, just what you're hearing from constituents.
Well, we are getting an overwhelming number of calls from Hampton Roads where people are concerned about their jobs, where people are concerned about their economic future. We already, for example, have the whole ship repair industry operating on a continuing resolution. That means they can't start new work because even though we're 5 months into the fiscal year, we don't have a budget. And that could get worse come March 14th when the current funding runs out. What we're looking for are members of Congress to step up and fight for their constituents. Until we can say to the Doge boys, enough already. You're doing irreparable damage. The nature of government now is the Democrats are in the minority, and we can force amendment votes. But when everyone walks in lockstep, being afraid of Donald Trump and being afraid of Elon Musk, you'll see these kind of job losses. And my fear is in Hampton Roads, where we're obviously relying on the defense industry, we lose some of these good quality jobs, people may leave the region. And we've always tried to attract high-paying, high-quality jobs to Hampton Roads. We lose those $80,000 to $120,000 government contracting jobs in the defense industry. They may not come back. And put that burden on top of the already existing craziness with the fact that we don't have a budget, and the current budget continuing resolution runs out on March 14th. And you've got a recipe for disaster for the region. And what we're also hearing, and this is, people are reluctant to sometimes leave their names, is huge concerns from our military community about the purge of senior officers that took place last Friday night, when the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staffs and other senior military officials were purged by the Trump administration, where he's now trying to put in Trump loyalists rather than people with the candidly with the qualifications to serve in these major jobs. So we're asking people to let us know, but also let members of Congress and their local, city and county officials know. We've got to have, this is not business as usual. This is not just some traditional partisan food fight. This is literally undermining the security of our nation, and I believe in Hampton Roads cutting back on critical parts of our workforce. And how long it may take us to recover once these jobs disappear is anybody's guess.
Our next question will be from Janara Busey at WVEC. Janara, are you on the line? All right, moving on, our final question should be from Connor Nichols at WRIC. Connor, were you able to stay on the line?
Sorry, 8 News, Connor Nichols here. Senator, my question is, you and Senator Kaine recently wrote a letter expressing your concerns about to Senator Duffy about the lack of transparency with the FAA. So my question is, with recent crashes, from D.C. to the accident in Nome, Scottsdale, what do you think the guy who's only been in office for a few months can actually do to incorporate some change?
Well, it starts by not going about and firing FAA employees without any rhyme or reason. It starts with saying to our air traffic controllers, where we're already 3,000 short, that we're not going to put you under this probationary firing attempt that I think has been pulled back, but we can't get straight answers. And remember, the tragedy that took place at DCA, there was a near miss yesterday. I've not seen the full reporting, but I heard about it this morning on the news. We saw the images yesterday at Chicago O'Hare where there was a near miss. If the public loses faith in the safety of air travel, that will have huge ramifications to our economy. And, there does not seem to be any transparency on how they are choosing which FAA employees to fire. And we are hearing concerns about that. And again, these are things that once folks lose confidence in air traffic, you can't flick a switch and bring it back. Once you lose some of this expertise, you cannot bring it back overnight. These are not interchangeable jobs the way a coder would be. Coming out of Silicon Valley, the Doge boys may say, well, I can fire this coder and bring in another one because similar skills. Managing our air safety is something that takes years of work and years of experience. And I think the administration is playing with fire. And I hope the Transportation Secretary answers our letter and becomes more transparent, and that there's a review process. I know there's a number of FAA employees I think are suing the administration. So rather than doing the job to keep our nation safe in terms of air traffic, they are caught in litigation because of firings that appear to be both short-sighted and potentially illegal.
We have one more question from Michael Pope. He had to hop off the line, but here is his question. He specifically wants your thoughts about Governor Glenn Youngkin holding the all-time record for vetoes. He now has more than 200. By way of comparison, you had fewer than 20 vetoes as governor. What's your response?
Well, my response is that when I was governor, I had a 2-to-1 Republican legislature, but I found ways to work together. And that paid off for Virginians. We fixed our budget shortfall. We got named the best managed state in the country. We got named the best state for business in the country. Virginia's schools, from preschool to graduate school, got named the best in the nation. And that came because I actually found ways to work with the Republican legislature. We didn't always agree, by no means. I was thinking back to some of the members of Congress who were Republicans, who I think their job was to almost bash me every day, but that was part of their job, but we still found ways to work together. I think that is what Virginians want, that is what Americans want, and I will stand on the bipartisan record I created as governor of Virginia. I think it put us in economic good standing, and obviously other governors take a different approach.
That was our final question.
Thank you all. Sorry so much about the screw up. We'll make sure the next time we get this fixed. Thanks, everyone.